if you watch any of the cooking that I do, you'll see that whenever I'm cooking a seafood dish, I try to use original seafood stock. Now, part of this may be because I have unlimited access to it, but the redfish courgouillon that you're about to see me cook, you have to have water to add to it, stock to add to it. And I just don't get these folks that cook seafood recipes and add chicken stock to it. If all you've got is chicken stock from the grocery store, that's fine. But even there, they sell seafood stock. Any chance I get where I've got the raw materials, I'm going to make my own. So these are actually the bellies, the rib cages. You can see the rib bones and a little bit of innards left in there that I got to pick clean. But these are the rib cages out of the redfish that we're going to use in the courgouillon itself. And to make me a fish stock, which is going to make it taste 10 times better than that using just clean water. All I'm going to do is I'm going to ball these redfish bellies. I'm going to ball them until they fall apart. And then once they fall apart, I'm going to strain it, use a strainer, save the water. That'll be the water that I use in the dish itself. And then throw the ribs and the pieces away. So, always using a natural stock or a stock that's relevant to what you're cooking is always better when you have the opportunity to do it. We're going to start off with 3 chopped onions, 3 bell peppers chopped. What's not shown here is I also put a couple of stalks of celery in that was chopped up pretty wide. So you chop them up. I like to leave, for this dish, I like to leave my chunks kind of big because I like to actually taste it while it's in the food. But there you go, 3 bell peppers, 3 onions, and some celery. So now we're going to make a roux, and for this roux today we're going to use butter instead of cooking oil. So you're going to melt a stick of butter and then add about the same 50-50 butter and flour. Once you put the flour in, you start stirring it. Once your roux starts cooking, you need to stir it fairly regularly to keep it from sticking to the bottom of the pot or burning. When it first begins, you can stir a little bit, take a break if need to, but once it starts cooking, you need to stir it repeatedly. We're gonna make what they call a blonde roux on this one. We don't want it real dark, but we want to cook it down until it becomes a light brown. Okay, you can see here that our roux is just about ready. You can tell it's turned a little brown on us. So we're going to stir it a little bit, just a little bit more, and then we're going to have to add, it's time to add the onions, the bell peppers, and the celery. So when you get it to the color you want, you go ahead and you introduce your onions, your bell pepper, your celery, and you start cooking that down. Now it's gonna turn real pasty on you when you put those cold ingredients in it. And as those onions begin to sweat, they're gonna create just a little bit of water. So it'll start putting water into it. You might have to add a little bit of water after a little while because you'll see it's really gonna get thick on you. But you just sweat these down for a little while. You don't want to cook them so long that they disintegrate on you, but sweat them down to where the flavors start marrying with each other, and then it'll be time to move to the next step. Ours did get a little bit pasty on us. And so just to move things along, I'm going to add a little bit of water just to help me soften these onions and all up. But just a little bit's all it takes to just help start sweating the onions, the bell peppers, and the rest of your vegetables. Once your vegetables start softening up a little bit, then it's time to go ahead and add your next ingredients. Here I'll be adding some whole stewed tomatoes with the juice from the can. Just go ahead and dump those in there, and we're going to start cooking them a little while. Let them cook and start affecting the flavors and kind of mixing all together. You'll cook them for just a little while, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now that the tomatoes have had a little while to cook, and with your vegetables. Now it's time to go ahead and move to the next step, and that would be the stock that we made yesterday. Now, I made this stock yesterday while I was cooking some other stuff for Christmas and just kept it in the refrigerator overnight. So here you've got the container that I had it in, and that is simply the strained fish stock from the rib cages that I boiled yesterday. Now, again, if you don't have the access to either fish carcasses or rib cages or something like that, your first preference would be to use a seafood stock purchased from the grocery store. If you don't have access to the seafood stock, then you can go ahead and use chicken stock if need be. But always your first choice is going to be a seafood stock. Now it's time to add our next ingredient, which is going to be a can of tomato paste. You'll see once this gets added in and once it begins to cook down, it's going to kind of change the color of the water, and it'll start looking more reddish, and it'll of course try to start thickening it up. But put that in, you're going to want to bring it back to a good simmer. That way that tomato paste cooks in, disintegrates, and becomes part of your stew. Well, we've added the tomato paste and it's really starting to look good and take shape, but now it's time to add the next ingredient. And this will add just a little bit of flavor for you, and it depends on what your taste is. Here I'm putting in a can of Rotel tomatoes and chilies. I'm using the mild version. Of course, at this point, this is where you can start customizing it, and whatever your taste are, whatever suits your taste. You can always go with the more seasoned ones. They make some specialty flavors with different peppers in them, just according to taste here. You customize any and everything you want with dishes like this. But here is going in with a can of mild Rotel tomatoes. And you can see how I've got it at a slow rolling boil. That way it's helping to cook those tomatoes and get everything ready to go. Once you get the Rotel added, then you can go ahead and really start seasoning it up. And here again, it's all personalization. It's all what you want, your taste, how you like it. I'm going to add some Tony Chachere's. I'm going to add some parsley. I'm going to add some basil, some salt and pepper. There again, 100% personalization. You cannot go wrong here. This is where your personal taste comes into play. Season it with whatever you want, but I'm using Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning, putting some parsley in it, and I am adding some basil, salt, and pepper. Oops, and I almost forgot, a couple of spoons of minced garlic. So while you all were gone, we let this stuff cook down for about 45 minutes or so. The stewed tomatoes have really started to break up, and you can see it's got a nice rich red flavor. But while you were gone, we did taste it, and we saw that we needed a little more seasoning in it. I made a little bit more than what I was anticipating. So we're going to add some more celery and some more basil and a few other things. There again, this is all to your taste. So add whatever you want to it, get it tasting like you want. Now it's time for the last step. It's time to add the fish. You can see I've taken my redfish fillets and I've cut them up into about 2 to 3 inch chunks. Some of your smaller pieces, like when you get to the tail pieces, they'll disintegrate, but you want them in good 2 to 3 inch chunks. You'll also see that I've cut the bloodline out. And what a bloodline is, you'll see right here, it's a piece of reddish colored meat that's right next to the skin and right down the middle of the fillet. You want to cut that bloodline out. These were bigger redfish, so we did take the bloodline out. But you make sure you add your fish last because you don't want it to cook and break up. You want it to cook just long enough to get your fish done. Now here, of course, we're using redfish. But you can use any firm fish. You can use redfish, you can use catfish, you can use sheephead. Of course, we have all the redfish you could ever hope for in this world. So we are going to stock it real full. It's going to be a real meaty couvillon. I'm going to have a whole lot of redfish in it. But you add your redfish in. Now from this point on, you want to cook it just until the fish are done. And you'll see as we add these fish in, you don't want to be real aggressive when you stir it. You want to fold them in and get them all into your gravy to where they'll cook and cook evenly. But you don't want to sit there and stir it aggressively to where you break them up into little pieces. You let this cook for about, well, I mean, you can grab a piece of fish, one of your thicker pieces of fish with a fork and pull it apart. And once it pulls apart, you're done. And here it is, just a good old home-cooked redfish couvillon. Serve it in a bowl over rice, and you've got it done. And trust me, you will love this dish. A little hot sauce, a little Tabasco to top it off, put a little fresh parsley on top to finish it off and dress it up, and now you've got a couvillon.